I've been sitting here thinking to myself and thinking maybe I should make a video of my thoughts because my thoughts seem a little bit interesting to me at least. I am in Campbell, Tunisia right now, and I am able to, for the time being, chill out a little bit and do slow travel so slow that it's actually isomorphic to the sort of travel that retired people do. What is this thing? Anyway, um, I've been contemplating for some reason on 10 years ago. 10 years ago was 2015, and I was in a very entrepreneurial state of mind. I had a few part-time jobs, but I didn't have, no, actually I had a few part-time jobs, and then I had an actual side business reselling books on Amazon and doing book reselling for textbooks as well. And this sort of business evolved into something more similar to what I have now. And without that experience, my experience now would be very different. And I don't know if I would really actually understand in the way that I do the current business that I do if I hadn't done that previous iteration in the past. And I've been thinking about how crazy I must have looked. And how I definitely wasn't understood, but I was probably used to that at that point. But also, to the extent that I could see myself from friends and family's perspectives, I was weird and on some trip. Before, when I was thinking I wanted to use the word quixotic, I must have looked like Don Quixote fighting windmills or something. But to me, it made sense what I was doing, and it was logical, but I also had a vision of what I was doing and certain things I was learning. In retrospect, I would say that I was testing entrepreneurial ideas and looking to validate niches, or validate products or validate business models. That sort of a language I didn't really have back then for what I was doing. But I was trying to see all the little things that could be done to actually start a business and make money in a way that wasn't simply wage slavery, going to work for somebody else. Even though I did have part-time jobs doing that, at least a little bit, if not a bunch of them. What I really didn't want was just one boss, unless it was God. I didn't want just one human boss or like one company. There I felt very vulnerable. And I suppose to the extent that my certain business, my current business has that, I also feel vulnerable. But I remember, and it's like I may have that sort of vulnerability now, but I also have this passive income stream that 10 years ago was like a fantasy. It was a goal to find a true passive income stream, or something that was low maintenance enough to where it was mostly passive. So I was studying as many ways as I could to find such a thing. And I think I gave up eventually before I found it, which is a phenomenon that happens. You look for something for a long time. And seek and ye shall find is true, but there's also like the day is darkest. The night is darkest before the dawn. Like you might give up and then you finally give up, but then you finally get it. 10 years ago, I was searching for this passive income. And the passive income was ultimately to stop worrying about money and to stop having to like get up at a certain time and set my alarm in order to be component labor for a specific company. Now, there weren't many people in my family that did such a thing or like look for entrepreneurship, but it was my grandpa's vision to be such a thing. Like it was like he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He never was. I think he tried it a few times in a few ways, but he never really clinched an entrepreneurial way of life. He retired eventually, and then in his retirement he was able to do a bunch of goofy, far out stuff. So I think part of my understanding of what entrepreneurship is like you get to do that goofy, far out stuff to see if it works. You get to try a lot of experiments. But then most of my family and friends at the time, they just went to school and then found a job, usually like one job at one company, and that's it. And full-time job, and that's it. And there's no other. And they hoped the job would be cushy. Some of my friends would use the word bodge, which was job spelled backwards, which was just like a job that was a really easy job. It wasn't a job that you reminded one of responsibilities. It was just a job that was like easy. You'd go and clock in and chill out. And some of my friends that took that path found that sort of a thing. To me, even that seemed like a trap. Although it's nice to have a bodge, but it's not my goal to sit and do nothing. As much as I love being able to slow travel and have this peace at home, for sure, that's huge to me, and I don't want to give it up. And I do want to work towards fortifying that for as long as possible, because it's a good foundation for thought and decision making, if nothing else. But I don't want to do that for an employer. I don't want to do that for a specific employer, and like an employer that I'd have to get up every day and go to their workplace and then act like it's my home when it's not. So anyway, 10 years ago, I was doing a few delivery jobs for Chinese restaurants, and I was working at Home Depot as a bookkeeper in their vault there. And that's like invaluable experience to me now in building my own business, because the book's got to be done. And I managed a vault at Home Depot with tons of money in it and tons of different situations that had to be figured out and reconciled. And now I can do that for my own business that doesn't have to run that much money through it. But I know how to run a system that big in case it does. At the same time, I was starting my first entrepreneurship. Like I resold books. I think 10 years ago I had a bunch of jobs at once. Like at least 4 different income streams going on. And they were in between wage slavery jobs and entrepreneurial ventures. One of my entrepreneurial ventures I had was reselling foam. And that's like, in retrospect, one of my favorite businesses that I ever started. I did ultimately validate the niche, which means I started making sales. I didn't continue the business though. If I would have had like others around me that would have wanted to keep doing that, that could still be a thing. And it wasn't the perfect business or the perfect business model, but honestly, nothing really is. And if you try to find that theoretical business model that's like beautiful in all different ways, it's like this castle in the sky business model, it might remain a castle in the sky, and you might forget about the very basic bottom line of the company, which is like, does this thing make money without spending more money than it makes? The phone business made more money than it spent. I mean, it was a functional business for the short time that it worked. I didn't make tons and tons of money off of it, but it made more money than it spent. Which is different with like my music. I think overall I'm probably in the hole with music, especially the opportunity cost of like all the hours I spent not making any income from that. Anyway, yeah, I'm thinking about why am I here today in Tunisia, and why have I been able to travel as I have this past year and a half. I've been to at least 15 different countries, lived in many of them for a month at a time. Why would I want to do that? Why am I able to do that? Why does it feel disconnected from the last 9 or 10 years of my life? And I was thinking, because I spent so much time in Walker's Point, Milwaukee, doing music, it seems disjointed from the rest of what my life is now. But actually, it's quite related in that when I moved to Walker's Point, before I got the opportunity to move to Walker's Point, I wanted to move there, and I wanted this hella foreign reality. Hella foreign. And I was able to find that, and one of the reasons I loved Walker's Point was that I could go up and down Mitchell Street, and it took like years and years and years of living in Milwaukee to even know that this street was like that. Historic Mitchell Street, there was like a Pakistan shop and a Somalian shop and an Arab shop and a bunch of Mexican shops, Puerto Rican shops, Myanmar shops, with people operating them actually from those countries. And it was like a mini world, especially with really far-flung locales represented on that street or streets near it, on Lincoln or other places in Walker's Point or the South Side close to that. And it was really like getting into that state of mind there, that was like a microcosm of the world and a microcosm of what I really like doing now, which is spending time in foreign markets. And I always, not often enough, realized that living in Walker's Point, I would be at home a lot, in my apartment a lot. And I would get frustrated because like either something with my, I don't know, like I would be economically frustrated or something. And then I'd go and take a walk and just go shopping at these foreign markets within Milwaukee, and I was in such a good mood. It was like instantly like, oh my God, the world is an amazing place. And especially thanks to these representatives of foreign cultures and minorities, but also like minorities of minorities. It was just weird. Like, like a Pakistani person is very, very weird within Milwaukee. There's not a lot of them. Myanmar is even weirder. And also there were Rohingya, like the Myanmar Muslim people, not in Walker's Point, but closer to the airport. Still south side, more or less. And yeah, that would just pick me up out of all depression or frustration that I was feeling. And now, practically, I don't know if there's like any future for me in business related to foreign markets. But every day I benefit from the arbitrage of being in these markets. It's more affordable to be here. And yeah, it's more affordable to be here. And so there's my native like excitement of going to markets here. I almost cried the first time I went to a market here in Rastrabel, Tunisia. It was so amazing. And then the next week I found an even bigger market, that the Thursday market here that sprawls out across this entire street down here for like miles. I love seeing that. Even if I just walk through it and don't buy anything, that kind of experience is there's something about it that's so totally transcendent to me, and it takes me out of anything, any bad experiences. So I've been trying to figure out, why am I here now after the last 9 or 10 years of my life that I lived, and seeing how it actually is connected, and thinking about 10 years ago. I'm playing Leonard Cohen. His specific album is More Best Of from 1997, but it's like all classic Leonard Cohen songs from decades before that, probably. And I remember listening to that in my car at the time. I had a Nissan Maxima that I got from my aunt, and I was doing Chinese delivery, hopped up on stimulants like crazy, doing all these jobs. And I remember being in that car and doing those deliveries and thinking, like, it makes me feel safe. This is before the pandemic. It makes me feel safe that if something were to happen, some kind of emergency, I could sneak away into and just blend into like this Chinese restaurant. I was working at 2 Chinese restaurants. I speak Mandarin to an extent, and I did then too. But I could like go into this hellfarn world and just be hidden away from any cultural struggles that could be happening in a different culture. And I like the idea of being able to do that at the Chinese restaurant, and then kind of being able to do that within Islamic environments and within like Indian environments and stuff like that. But the idea of like, and it does find a larger applicability in a macrocosm of the world. Like if stuff goes wrong in one country, I'll just go to another one. And to a certain extent, it's kind of as simple as that. But also, on another extent, it's more complicated than that, because if you don't get out soon enough, then you're going to be stuck in whatever that is. And I remember the sensory experience of being in the back of the kitchen at Oyagi, Japanese name, but it was Chinese restaurant with all Chinese staff, Mandarin speakers. And there was like some fried rice or something cooking, and I'm waiting for a delivery. I'm sitting on a stool back there, and somebody in the other room is watching some kind of Chinese media on some device, and there's just this sensory experience of other, like I was in Milwaukee, somewhere in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but also within this different culture, and like really in it. I didn't feel like a member of something else. I didn't feel like an outsider. There's just enough permeation to be like part of that staff, and I was sunk into, blended into that environment. And there was like a symbiotic membership that I felt there. But then I could go into other environments too and have the same sort of thing. The ability to do that, even though some of my less entrepreneurial family members may have doubted that I had any survival skills, to me, that was a survival skill that I had, and I was building for a long time out of instinct. Or like that ability to blend into a different culture and really like blend into it, like abnegation. And I think now in the digital nomad sort of slow travel lifestyle that I have right now, I still value that kind of cultural abnegation, that sort of cultural sinking into it, because it's not just a like vacation travel experience of like trying to find a honeymoon period of like, wow, this place is amazing. I definitely want that. I definitely want that everywhere I go. But I also want this period where I've been there for like 20 days, feeling like, oh, I've been here a long time. And then I'm just sort of bored. But that's when I'm sunk in. And in my experience, I won't really forget what that specific vibe is, to be able to do that, to be within a culture and at peace with it, truly at peace with it, in membership. Yeah, you look different, but the way you act is not different from everyone else. You know how to actually fit within the group, even if the group is a very different culture from the one you were born into. That makes me feel safe. And it's a great adventure at the same time. I think some of this stuff is hard fought in a way that is not an external fight by any means. So if you go into a new culture, in my experience, there's going to be ways of being, as well as a completely different sensory experience. It looks different, it sounds different, It smells different. It tastes different. It feels different. It intuitively seems different. The sense of time is different. You know, entire cultures can be governed in time by the grandfather clock or the call to prayer 5 times a day. Everything is time bound. Each culture is time bound differently. You got to get used to those things, and there can be an internal psychological battle of just getting used to it. That's what's hard fought about this. But once you conquer that, you know, that's not man versus nature or even man versus man. That's man versus self. It happens in your own psyche. The boon to your life of being able to do that is the ability to abdicate into the culture. And by that I mean the ability to blend and actually legitimately be at peace within a culture. There's no culture that's going to be at peace at all times. It doesn't seem like it. Even if for a long time a country goes without a civil war or something, then things get very volatile. And being within it, I feel bad for the people who only have one culture, but God bless them, because there are people like that, and there will always be people like that. And they defend the borders of their specific cultures more than anyone. Borders and not just the territorial borders, but the cultural borders and the borders of normality, which is ultimately what I'm talking about abnegating into. But there's a bunch of different versions of that. A few years ago in Tunisia here, there was, in North Africa in general, there was Arab Spring protests. And the country wasn't necessarily at peace. Now I would say it is. There's zones of terrorism, but not, not in the capital city. It's not like that in Tunisia, and it's not like that where I'm going to Egypt, where I'm going next, inshallah. But in the United States, the vibe's not great. So I don't know what I was preparing for 10 years ago, but I'm glad I was preparing for it, because the vibe got not at peace. And there wasn't, there's just a lot of stuff it's hard to communicate at all, because of political division. Even saying safe things are not going to be safe. Because it's that divided, or at least seems like that to me, or that's what happened with my family and friends, or that's what happened in my own mind in a way that I can't see out of, or couldn't when I was in the United States. But now I do see out of that, and I do live outside of that. And it reminds me more of that kind of experience where I feel safe if I can escape my culture and move into the peaceful abnegation to another culture. It involves learning shibboleths, or it can. It involves, I don't know, I see it as a vibe thing, as an emotional thing, and the calming of your own fears in your mind about a totally different cultural world, to the point where you can totally calm down into it. It's hard fought within your own psyche, within your own emotional body, your thought body, within yourself. And I had a sense a decade ago that there were people around me and family and friends that they didn't have a second culture. They had one culture and they couldn't get out of it. Maybe they never wanted to. Maybe they never conceptualized such a thing. Maybe they would perceive themselves as a traitor if they did such a thing. I think I valued peace over belonging. And maybe that's why I feel much more at peace, or I feel at peace much more often than I feel belonging. Though this kind of peaceful abnegation I'm talking about, that's definitely a kind of belonging. And that's like a cosmic kind of belonging. Because like peace is a higher octave of belonging. Even if you don't have the membership card somewhere, if you functionally get along with everybody and there's a sense of holy love, this is the Enneagram 9's feeling, then nobody can hurt you because nobody would want to. But there's definitely zones in this world, and over time it changes where they are, where there's revolution happening, and where there's a chance that your own belonging to a certain group or a certain culture or a certain faction of a culture is going to cause you to go to war and die. And you'll probably die mentally and emotionally before you die physically. So, shout out to all my Americans back home in the war that is always going on these days, has been going on big time for a while. But, I'm glad that I found foreign markets and foreign stores and representatives of immigrants within the United States that simply held the entire vibe. It's a whole vibe, as they say, of different cultures, different cultures, totally different ways of organizing everything, because in different cultures there's a different, like I said, there's a different way of time government, there's a different ontology, there's a different cosmology, there's a different, sometimes thousands of year history, a different sense of food and medicine, but all of that creates a whole vibe. I'm so grateful for those things and those immigrants who set up those little spaces in the city I was born in to give me a sense of the a microcosm of the entire world. They were all like little missionaries who weren't evangelistic. They weren't trying to come convert me, although some of those cultures are evangelistic, or like Muslims do dawah and so on and so forth. But some of them were just people setting up a store to serve their own tiny community of people. And those meant a lot to me, because that was like a vacation in itself, just to go to those places. And that was where I found my salvation, in life many times. And I think I chase that. And I chase that feeling of beneficial culture shock. Like when I go, especially now, if I actually go to a new country and I'm there and everything is different, the whole sensory experience instantly. Like if you go to, especially if you go from one region of the world to another, but it can actually happen very close. For example, Armenia from Georgia, you can go from Yerevan to Tbilisi and it's like incredibly different despite being relatively close. Or like from Vlora, Albania to Skopje, North Macedonia, it is very different. Because many reasons, geographical reasons, but also the cultures that built those cities primarily have entirely different history, many generations back. And the hard-fought ability to culturally abnegate and be at peace with the culture and be used to it in some deeper sense, even after just like 20 days of sitting in it and having a place there and ultimately being bored. I mean that in the holiest sense, because it's when you get this sense of holy love. What is Enneagram 9 good at doing? Nothing. And so in the negative form, it's sloth. But in the positive form, it can be experiences like this of holy love and abnegation to the complete peace and calm that all cultures have at their center, which is why they exist and why they are a font of survival for so many different people at one time. It may be possible from the outside to look at one social group or culture and see it as fundamentally unstable, especially if you're at war with them or you're very different from them. But really, fundamentally, cultures at their core, there's a peace and quiet that sustains everybody in them.